Good morning, guys! So, kami po yung Group 1 and magre-report po kami ng approaches to classroom management. Bago ako magsimula, gusto ko munang gawin nyo ang mga bagay na gagawin ko. Una, ipagdikit nyo ang inyong mga kamay. Isipin mo na ito ang iyong mga kaibigan. Ito ang Panginoong Diyos. Ito naman ang sarili mo. And ito ang mga kaklase mo. At ito ang mga tao na nagmamahal sa'yo. Ikaw, papasok ka sa loob. Yan. Ganyan. Kita po? Yan. Pagka pinasok mo yung sarili mo, eto, mga kaibigan mo, aalis yan sila. Kapag umalis sila, buo ka pa rin. Dikit ka pa rin. Fix ka pa rin, di ba? Pangalawa, itong mga taong nagmamahal sa'yo, kapag umalis sila sa buhay mo, buo ka pa rin. Fix ka pa rin, tama? Magkadikit pa rin, tama po? Pangatlo, etong mga kaklase mo. Kapag umalis sila sa buhay mo, fix ka pa rin, buo ka pa rin. Tama po? Next, eto si Jesus. Kapag umalis siya sa buhay mo, mawawasak ka. Sige, try po natin. Alisin natin itong part na to, paghiwalayin natin nang hindi ka kumakalas, nang hindi to nakakalas. Kaya po? Di ba hindi? Automatic kapag ginanon natin siya, kakalas siya. Mawawala siya. Mawawala ka sa sarili mo. So, ibig sabihin po, hindi natin magagawa lahat ng bagay kung bibitaw tayo sa Panginoong Diyos. Yun lamang po. So, magsisimula na po tayo ng approaches to classroom management. Your personality, philosophy, and teaching style will directly affect your managerial and disciplinary approach. These are many approaches, but one you adopt must be comfortable for you and coincide with your personal characteristic. So, ano po ba ang ibig sabihin ng managerial? So, ang ibig sabihin po nito ay relating to management or managers, especially of the company or similar organization. So, sila po yung mga nagmamanage or managerial means pagmamanage po ng isang bagay. So, ibig sabihin daw po, ang ating personalidad, ang ating paniniwala, at ang ating mga pagmamanage, magiging malaking apekto po yun kung paano tayo magtuturo sa ating mga estudyante. Next. The 7 of these approaches models that are considered below are grounded in research and are applicable to classroom, although they are based on the mixtures of psychology, classroom experience, and common senses, all blended elements of prevention with techniques for interventions. So, ibig sabihin po ay meron tayong 7 na approaches models. So, iba't iba po yun ng mga characteristic. Meron doon na merong personality na magaling siya makipag-usap sa tao. So, ganun yung approaches po yung gagamitin natin. For example, yung isang tao is mahinhin, ikaw, teacher ka, tapos hindi ka masyadong mapala-communicate sa tao. So, merong approaches na magiging swak sa'yo. Next. They are recommend somewhat similar measures. They differ as the relative importance of preventions and intervention, the degree of control and supervision exercised by the teacher, and the relative emphasis on task and personality. So, ibig sabihin nga po, yun nga, pare-parehas lang sila. Pare-parehas lang yung mga strategy, pero nagkakaiba lang dahil sa kung paano natin i-approach ang mga estudyante. Next. Pupunta po tayo ngayon sa assertive approach. Expect teachers to specify rules and behavior and consequence of disobeying them and to communicate these rules and consequence clearly. Ibig sabihin, ina-expect po ang mga teacher na bibigyan natin ng rules yung mga bata kung hindi sila sumunod. For example, sinabi mo sa estudyante mo na, huwag kang lalabas. pero lumabas sila. Aalis ako, wag kayong lalabas, pero lumabas sila. So, ibig sabihin, ipapaliwanag natin kung ano ba ang magiging consequence o rules kapag hindi nila sinunod ang ating mga rules and regulation. Next, the classroom is managed in such a way that students are not allowed to forget who is in charge of the classroom. Sa classroom po natin, sino ba ang charge sa mga bagay-bagay? So, Mr. President Wilbert Ticas, tama po? So, ibig sabihin, kailangan ang mga estudyante, hindi nila makakalimutan kung sino ba yung mga tao na in charge dun sa bagay na yun. For example, pag elementary, di ba lahat tayo takot tayo na malista or masulat na tayo ng tayo, yung mga maingay, ganon. So, ibig sabihin, tayo, kapag may mga ganon, titignan natin, ay, naglilista ba si ano? Naglilista ba si ganyan? Ganon. Yun, kapag po, kailangan, hindi nila makakalimutan kung sino yung in charge doon sa naging rules and regulation po natin. Next. According to Duke and Manuel, students come to realize that the teacher expect them to behave in the certain way in the class. So, sabi daw po ni Duke and Manuel, students come to realize. Ibig sabihin, pumupunta ang mga estudyante para ma-realize. Ano ba sa Tagalog ang ma-realize? Maisip na malaman kung ano ba ang ina-expect sa kanila ng mga teacher. For example, high school student ka na. Magpipitik ka pa ba ng kulangot sa katabi mo? Di ba hindi na? Kasi pang elementary siya. Next, teachers hold students accountable for their action. Teachers hold students accountable for their action. So, ibig sabihin po, ang mga teacher, sila ang magiging responsible sa kung ano ba ang magiging action ng estudyante. Katulad na lamang po ng merong isang estudyante na napag-guidance. Sino ba unang tinatawag? Di ba advisor muna bago ang parent? So, ibig sabihin, teacher muna ang makakaalam nun or magiging responsable sa ginawang action ng estudyante bago po yung kanilang mga parent. Next. If misbehavior is ignored or not stopped at an early stage, it will eventually become uncontrolled and more students will become disruptive. So ano po ba ang ibig sabihin ng disruptive? According to Google.com, causing of tending and cause of disruption. So disruption means disturbance or problem. So, ibig sabihin daw po, kapag sa bata pa lang ang estudyante is hindi mo sila natuturuan ng tamang disiplina sa loob ng paaralan. Tutuloy po yan pagdating ng high school, college, at magiging problema po iyon. Next, the teacher takes charge of the classroom immediately, set the ground rules, and interact with the students in a calm yet forceful way. So, ibig sabihin, ang mga teacher hindi naman pwedeng sumigaw, di ba? Gusto mamatulpo. O kaya, hindi sila pwedeng mamalo ng kamay, mamitek, tawag dito, mampikot. Hindi siya pwede. Kasi matutulpo tayo. So, ibig sabihin daw po, kailangan pakiusapan mo o sabihan mo ang mga estudyante mo ng mahinahon, pero forceful or kailangan susundin po nila. Next. It is also assumed that firm classroom management liberates students because it allows them to develop their best traits, skills, and ability. Ano po ibig sabihin ng firm of classroom management? Ito, sinerge ko din po siya. When students know what to expect, that you are fair and that you care for each one of them. So, ibig sabihin daw po, kailangan mag-show tayo ng nag-care tayo sa kanila na para ma-enhance nila yung kanilang mga best trait or skills. For example, meron sa isang classroom na magaling sumayaw. So, kailangan magbigay tayo ng support na, anak, ang galing mo, kailangan tuloy-tuloy. Para mapakita nila at mas maengganyo sila na ipakita kung ano bang talento ang meron sila. Next, the approach probably as most effective at the secondary level in inner city classroom, where it is now recognized that chronic students, behavior problem often exists. So, ibig sabihin daw po, yung pagiging effective nung approach na ginagawa natin sa assertive approach is nangyayari po sa secondary level, which is high school. Kasi pag elementary, hindi naman nila, syempre, pag elementary, ano ba mga ano nila, di ba? Values, ganun. Kapag secondary level na po, mas intense po yung kanilang rules and regulation. Tama po? Next, this type of approach was criticized in 1960s as authoritarian, repressive, militaristic, and prejudicial towards military students. Next, the contours make the following suggestion for teacher apply assertive discipline. First, clearly identify expectation. Kailangan i-identify natin kung ano ba ina-expect natin sa isang estudyante. Next, take position. Say, I like that or I don't like that. For example, may ginawang isang bagay yung estudyante. Sasabihin mo sa kanila na kailangan mag-recognize ka. Like, oh, I like that. Gusto ko yun. Gusto ko yan. Galing mo dyan. Ganon. Galing mo. Para ma-appreciate naman nila. Next, use a firm tone of voice. Kailangan mahinahon po tayo. Hindi tayo dapat sumisigaw, hindi dapat tayo nagbumura, hindi dapat tayo yung parang may iba tayong pinopoint doon sa sinasabi natin. Next, use eye contact, gestures, and touches to supplement verbal language. Di ba pa sinabi sa atin dati ni Ma'am Nosa na kapag nagtuturo ka, kailangan mo ng action. Kailangan mong maging artist. Kailangan mong mag-perform sa harapan ng estudyante. Na kailangan mo na eye contact para maniwala sa'yo yung mga taong nakikinig sa'yo. Next, say no without guilt feelings. Kapag sinabi mong hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na hindi. Kailangan, ay hindi. Mga ganon. Yung kailangan, wala kang sama ng loob kapag sinabi mong hindi. Kung may nagpaalam sa'yo, ma'am, pwede po pong mag-CR? Alam nga naman sabihin mong, ay hindi. Diba? Sabi mo, sorry, wag muna ngayon. Tapusin lang muna natin to. Tapos, saka tayo magpo-proceed. Next, give and receive compliment genuinely. So, ibig sabihin, bibigay ka ng compliment, magtatanggap ka rin ng compliment. Pag sinabi, ma'am, ang ganda mo din. Ganon. Next, place demands on students and enforce them, applying assertive discipline. Next, number 8, set limits on students and enforce them. So, ibig sabihin po ay magsiset tayo ng limits na hindi porket mabait tayo sa estudyante, gaganon-ganonin na tayo. Hindi naman pwede kapag mabait tayo sa estudyante, aabusuhin na tayo. Kasi marami pong mga teachers na kapag mabait, hindi na napasok ang mga estudyante or binibiro-biro na ng mga estudyante. Next, indicate consequences of behavior and why specific action is necessary. Next, be calm and consistent. Avoid emotions or threat. Kailangan po natin maging kalmado at consistent. Ano ba consistent? Basta consistent. Simula hanggang dulo, dapat ganun ka. Next, avoid emotions and threats. Hindi naman pwede yung pag sinabi nung estudyante, ma'am, hindi po ako papasok kasi po nasakit po ang paa ko. Dahil favorite mo yung estudyante, ang gagawin mo, ay nakakaawa naman siya. Sige, paano kung hindi totoo yung sinasabi ng estudyante, di ba? Kailangan natin na isipin yung mga bagay-bagay. Hindi natin una iniisip ang puso, kundi yung utak natin. Next, follow through regularly. Yun, follow mo lang kung ano yung ginagawa mo. Dapat, hindi pa bago-bago. Next, persist and enforce minimum rules. Don't give up. Don't give up on the step. Yan lang. Persist and blah. Next, establish positive expectation for students' behavior. Eliminate negative expectation about students. Kailangan yung i-expect mo sa mga estudyante mo, positive. Kailangan mag-isip ka ng positive. Na kaya nila yan. Magagawa nila yon. Hindi naman kasi pwede na negative yung iisipin natin kasi ang magiging result, negative. Kailangan positive thinker lang tayo. kahit alam natin na hindi kayang gawin ng estudyante or mahihirapan ang estudyante, kailangan isipin natin na kaya nila yun. Gain confidence and skills in working with chronic behavior problems in classroom. Sinerge ko yung chronic students' behavior. These are the students who continue to disrupt the learning environment, challenge the teacher, and often try to encourage others to behave badly on the regular basis. So, ibig sabihin daw po, yung mga chronic behavior problems, sila yung mga estudyante na walang ibang ginawa kundi magpasaway. Walang ibang ginawa kundi mag-ingay ng mag-ingay at mandadamay pa ng ibang tao para mag-ingay sa loob ng classroom. Next. Teachers who are able to apply assertive discipline techniques not only have more confidence in their own ability as teacher, but also get along better with students. So, ibig sabihin daw po, ang mga teacher na ginagamit yung assertive approach, sila daw po yung mga tao na maraming confidence sa sarili at sa kakayahan nila bilang teacher, but sila din po ang mga teacher na napapalapit ang loob sa ating mga estudyante. Next. Kung merong assertive, meron din po tayong non-assertive teachers. So sila naman po is basically powerless to control students and often passively accept what students do or react with sarcasm, hostility, and either threats. So, ibig sabihin daw po ng sarcasm is the use of word usually used to either mock or annoy someone. Ano po ba ang ibig sabihin ng annoy? Annoy sa Tagalog ay nakakainis or nagpapainis. So, ibig sabihin daw po, etong mga non-assertive teachers, sila yung mga teacher na tinatanggap na lang kung ano ang ginagawa sa kanila ng estudyante. Kung ano yung ire-react sa kanila ng mga estudyante. Kahit na nakakainis na, ina-accept lang po nila. Next. The assertive models hold that teachers must establish firm management at the beginning of the year by clarifying appropriate expectation of responsibility behavior, identify existing or potential discipline problems, deciding on negative and positive consequences of behavior that fits the students at situation, learning how to follow through the implement this consequence. The plan is best achieved through mental rehearsal, having a good idea or what to do before something occurs, and practice learning from mistake. So, ibig sabihin daw po, kailangan i-clarify natin yung mga approach at expectation na kailangang responsibilidad ng mga estudyante. Kasi hindi naman lahat, kailangan teacher ang magiging responsible. Kailangan sabihin natin, kapag ba gumawa sila ng kasalanan, hindi naman pwedeng teacher lahat, di ba? Kailangan mag-take din sila ng responsibility. Next. Next is the business academic approach. Well-run classroom free from disruptions, where students behave in an orderly manner and are high involved in learning, are not accidental. They exist where teachers have a clear idea of a type of a classroom conditions, students' behavior, and instructional activities they wish to produce. Nag-e-exist daw po ang business academic approach. Bakit? Ito daw po ay nangyayari kapag ang teacher ay mayroong malinaw na ideya kung paano patatakbuhin ang isang classroom. Kapag ang teacher ay bihasa na o kapag ang teacher ay maalam na, ibig sabihin, malaki ang tendency na mangyari ang business academic approach. Kasi ang mga estudyante ay alam na kung ano ang gagawin at ang teacher ay alam na kung paano patatakbuhin ang classroom at ang kanyang mga students. Next. Developed by Evertson and Emmer, emphasize the organization and management of students as they engage in academic work. academic work. So, ibig sabihin, dinevelop daw po siya ni Everson and Emmer. Next, Everson and Emmer divide organizing and managing students' work assignments, standard and procedure, monitoring of student works, and feedback to students. Ibig sabihin daw po, si Everson at saka si Emmer ay nagawa na kailangan i-monitor ang mga ginawa ng estudyante at kailangan magbigay tayo ng feedback. Meron kasi mga teacher na kapag ba nagpapasa ng activity or nagpapasa ng quiz, hindi mo na alam kinabukasan kung anong score mo. Hindi mo na rin alam kung sa mga ilang ka ba? Mataas ba ako? Basta pinasa, basta kinuha. Tapos hindi naman ginalik. Tapos wala na, hindi mo na alam kung anong score mo, hindi mo alam kung nakapasa ka, hindi mo alam kung bagsak ka ba o ano. Kaya sa susunod, kapag nag-test, hindi niya alam kung ano re-reviewin niya. Kasi hindi niya alam kung saan siya bumagsak. So, kailangan daw po, i-monitor natin kung ano yung mga ginagawa ng estudyante at sabihan natin ng feedback yung mga estudyante. For example, 9 out of 20 yung estudyante. Kailangan sabihin natin na, susunod, aralin mo tong ganito, ganyan. Hindi yung pagkakuha mo ng papel, itatago mo na sa cabinet. May mga teacher po kasi na ganon. Next. Clear communication of assignment and work requirements. The teacher must establish and explain clearly to students work assignment, features of work, standard to be met, and procedures. So, ibig sabihin daw po, kailangan ang teacher ay ma-explain niya ng maayos kung ano ba ang assignment or kung ano ba ang mga procedure na gagawin. For example, kapag nagbigay ka ng assignment, hindi naman pwede, eto may assignment tayo. Kailangan ipasa nyo yan ng ganito, ganyan. Hindi naman pwedeng ganun. Kailangan, kung ba igagrap ba o kung pahala na ba sila o kailangan ba may pagkakasunod-sunod ba, essay form ba? For example, nagsabi, give 10 kemarut, ganyan. Siyempre, kailangan sasabihin mo in essay form ba? Or pwede in bullet form? Hindi naman po pwede na basta-basta na lang. Next. Instruction for assignments. Explanations should be made in both oral and written forms. In addition to telling the students about assignment, teachers should post assignment on a chalkboard or contribute duplicate copies. Students should be required to copy assignment posted on the chalkboard into their notebooks. Ibig sabihin daw po kapag nag-explain ka ng assignment, kailangan daw po parehas. Hindi pwedeng sinabi mo lang na may assignment tayo, maghanap kayo ng libro na may kinalaman sa ethics. Paano kung nakalimutan ng estudyante? Paano kung walang cellphone yung estudyante, walang mapagtanungan, nakalimutan niya yung sinabi mo, hindi niya isinulat sa notebook niya? Ang mangyayari, kinabukasan, wala siyang assignment. Tama po? Next naman po, kapag hindi mo hinayaan ang estudyante na magsulat sa kanyang notebook, may tendency na hindi niya matandaan yon. Or kailangan, habang sinasabi mo, ipinapasulat mo, chinechekan mo. Bago sila lumabas ng pinto, nakaabang ka sa pinto, isa-isa sila, papakita nila yung notebook nila na isinulat nila sa papel yung kanilang magiging assignment. Next. Standard for form, neatness, and due dates. Number 2. Before students starts, they should be given general rules for all assignments, type of paper, and writing materials to use, page numbering system, form of headings, due dates, and so forth. Student will then know what is expected of them without having to be told each time. Ibig sabihin daw po, bago ka magpapasa ng mga assignment, kailangan daw po i-identify natin sa mga students kung ano ba yung gagamitin nating papel. For example, katulad ni Sir Kadag, di ba, hindi naman siya nagpapasulat sa yellow paper. Normally, sulat siya or nagpapapasa siya na nakasulat tayo sa bond paper. Either short, either long, basta bond paper. Kung hindi bond paper, Manila paper. Next, number system. For example, ano magagamitin natin? Sasabihin mo, Roman numeral po ba? ABCD po ba? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Kailangan sabihin din po natin kung ano kung type ba siya o pwedeng sulat kamay, ita-type po ba? Kung type, Times New Roman ba? Anong size? Kailangan po sabihin natin yon. Next, kung kailan ipapasa, hindi naman po pwedeng, kinabukasan, pagkabigay mo ng assignment, o nasa na yung mga assignment nyo. Hindi mo naman sinabi kung anong due date, di ba? So, maraming mga estudyante na magre-reklamo sa teacher. Next. Last is the
Number 3. Procedures for absent students. Routines should be established for make-up work for absent students. This must include meeting briefly with students and the same time before, after schools, assigning classroom helpers who will be able to particular times of the day to help the students, and having a designated place where students can pick up and turn in makeup work. So, ibig sabihin daw po sa number 3, kailangan mag-assign tayo ng mga estudyante kung sino ba ang maglilinis ng ating classroom pagkatapos, at kung saan magme-makeup classes yung mga estudyante na mabababa po yung grades. Next.
Next, this is the continuation of Krizelle's work, monitoring student work. Monitoring student work helps the teacher to detect students who are having difficulty and to encourage students to keep working. Um, in monitoring group work, the teacher uses standardized tests that includes all the materials presented over the lesson. The first one is, next. Okay, monitoring group work. In every lesson, the teacher must prepare every activity which is a group task. The teacher must be sure that all of the students start the group work. Next, monitoring individual work. It can be monitored in several ways. For example, the teacher assign a project in every student. And also, the student will give feedback based on the project of his or her classmate. The grade of the student was based on the output and the time spent in doing a project. If it is late, it should have deduction. Next, monitoring completion of work. For example, the professor give an activity. When all of the students do a task, the best procedure of the teacher is to have a work pass in a given direction with no talking, so that every student will do the activity and will be passed it on time. Next, maintaining records of students. It is important for teachers to keep records of the student work and also the attendance. Attendance is part in grading of a student. The record should be divided into several ways. For example, the attendance, the activity sheets, the performance, and also a project and daily homework. Okay, next. Feedback to students. Frequent, immediate, and specific feedback is important for enhancing academic monitoring and managerial procedure. Okay, a teacher must give a feedback to the activity of his or her student. He needs to make a criteria in grading his students so that it will easily make feedback to them. The first one is attention to problems. Okay. It is important for teachers to pay attention to the lesson and also to their students. The first time a student failed to do their activity, um, The task of the teacher, if the student need help, the teacher should provide it, but it should be insist that at the same time that student do the work. Next, attention to good work. Part of giving feedback is to acknowledge good work. For example, in our classroom, Crisel got the high score in long quiz. So Sir Richmond will give an honor to Crisel, for example, displaying her work or by giving her oral recognition. Next. Okay. Behavioral modification approach. Behavioral modification is rooted in classic work of James Watson and more recent work of B.F. Skinner. It involves a variety of techniques and methods ranging from simple reward in elaborating reinfor- reinforcement in training. Next. Okay. These are the methods in effective classroom managers. How to have effective classroom management, especially the teacher must be sure that his students should be orderly cleanliness, ano pa ba have organized, have a positive behavior. Okay, the first one is readying the classroom. Being prepared leads to less stress. If one is not prepared, then they may feel stressed out. On the other hand, if one student complete the assignment or the task, um, they read the materials that will be more likely to be able to focus upon the class. Next, planning rules and procedures. The teachers must plan the rules and procedures to their students. Teacher make sure students understand and follow the rules and procedures. We all know that classroom rules are the foundation for the functional classroom. If we have rules, it may affect to the behavior of the students, if it is acceptable or not. And also, it helps student works toward a common goal. Next, teaching rules and procedures. Okay. In teaching rules and procedures, will be guide if it is acceptable behavior that ensures safety of the students. Next, consequences. Not following rules and procedures are clearly established by the teachers. It is important to have consequences when students break the rules. Um, the three commonly consequences that refer to the student should be um, the student will go to the office, calling of parents, and making an empty threat. For example, a dropout. Next, beginning of school activities. In starting the class, the teacher spent getting to students. Syempre, dyan yung mag-i-introduce tayo ng name. Okay? For example, a teacher, um, in the first lesson, a teacher will make a twist on her classic for example making a classic game, and in that learning activity the teacher may introduce her first activity on the class. Okay, next po, strategies for potential problems. The teachers can deal with misbehavior more quickly than less effective managers. For example, dyan na yung makita ng teacher kung sino ba yung may acceptable behavior or not. Next, monitoring. In effective classroom management, the most important is monitoring the classroom and especially the students. Students' behavior is closely monitored. The teachers always monitor their students and also their academic work. Stopping inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate means you have a disruptive behavior. The teachers and students will limit their unnecessary work that are not related in the class. So to have a effective classroom management. Next, organize back po. Organizing instruction. Teacher must organize the instructional activities in the class so that there has a big possibility to learn and maintain the cooperation in the classroom. Next, student accountability. It is important trait to develop in your students. It helps them take responsibility for their action, learning, and helps improve academic performance and achievements. Instructional clarity. Teachers provide clear instruction. This will help students learn faster. Direction are clear so that they don't have confusion to the lesson.
Effective classroom management. The foremost concern of new teacher is managing the classroom effectively. But too often, managing effectively is seen as simple dealing with misbehavior. To view good classroom management as a set of strategies for disciplining student is to misunderstand the basis on which good management rests. Basic principle of the behavior modification approach are as follows. Behavior is shaped by its consequence. Consequence can be both positive and negative. And also, because their behavior has a positively reinforcing consequence, usually feel free. They seem to be doing what they want to do. Next, and the next is the behavior is strengthened by immediate reinforcers, the positive reinforcers and the negative reinforcers. The positive reinforcers is the something is added to increase the likelihood of a behavior, while the negative reinforcers is take away or stop something that the student doesn't like, or something is removed to increase the likelihood of a behavior. For example, in positive reinforcers, a mother gives her son praise for doing homework. The little boy receives a 5 pesos for every he earns on his report card. So, his mother praise her sons to doing a homework and receive the boy to give a 5 pesos because of a good report cards. While in example in negative reinforcers, the students behaves in such a way to remove oversized stimulus from the environment. Next is the behavior strengthened by systematic reinforcement. Behavior is weakened if it not followed by reinforcement. Behavior strengthened by systematic using the positive and the negative reinforcement. While the behavior is weakened, it not allowed by reinforcer because can cause to negative reinforcement that give you a punishment. Student responds better to positive reinforcers than they do punishment. Punishment can be used to reduce inappropriate. To take away a punishment and give her or her his award or praise it. It is implication or imposition of penalty as a retribution for an offense. For example, your student do an appropriate behavior and they do you give a punishment. This behavior will change because you give this a punishment. Then next is when a student is not rewarded for appropriate or adaptive behavior, maladaptive behavior may become increasingly dominant. When the teachers not give award to their student for an appropriate behavior, so become increasingly yung dominant. But you tell them to give her or her his punishment for their behavior and become a positive reinforcement so that can give a praise or reward that the student want. Then next is the constant reinforcement. That reinforcement of a behavior every time occurs produce the best result. So means constant reinforcement is refers to the number of times that you are reinforced a particular behavior. Then requires that you do each time so can produce it to the best result. Next is the once the behavior has been learned, it is best maintained through intermittent reinforce. When the when the student learn the best behavior so that the student maintain it through using intermittent reinforcement. For example, the student learned any positive behavior so that can maintain it the use of intermittent reinforcement, and so the student behavior is always positive. Then the number 8 is the intermittent reinforcement schedule includes the variable ratio, fixed ratio, and fixed interval. The variable ratio is a schedule of reinforcement where a behavior is reinforced after a random number of response. This kind of schedule results in high, steady rates of responding and in, in predictable intervals. For example of the variable ratio is the gambling and the lottery games because they focus on the hours or the time. Then while the fixed ratio is a schedule reinforcement when where a response is reinforced only after a specified number of response. For example of fixed ratio is a student receive a reward after a fixed number of times they perform a desired behavior. And fixed interval is supplying reinforcement at preselected intervals. For example of fixed interval is a weekly paycheck. There are several types of reinforcers. Example of positive reinforcers are social reinforcers, graphic reinforcers, tangible reinforcers, and activity reinforcers. In social reinforcers, this is the verbal comments. The example is yung right, concern, that's and good. Or in social reinforcers, you also the facial expression and gesture. While in graphic reinforcers is the written word of encouragement. Then the tangible reinforcers is sa physical reward given following a behavior that increase the likelihood of that behavior being repeated. For example of tangible reinforcers is stickers, check marks, and plastic disc. Then while in activity reinforcers, the activity reinforces when the student gets to do an activity. For example of activity reinforcers is play a game and spend time on the computer and allowing the student to take part in their proper activities if they behave appropriately. Then rules of are established and reinforced. Students who follow rules are praised and rewarded in various ways. Then the students who breaks rules are either ignored reminded about appropriate behavior or punishment immediately. Then each teacher has underdetermined value as a potential reinforcing a, again for each student. So means this is the value of is assigned initial by student on the basis of past experience and it's changed as a result of teachers' action. Then the teachers must realize that this evaluation process is going on the student and the positive relationship with the student will enhance his or her potential for influencing their behavior in class. Then the teacher must realize that this evaluation process is going on the student and the positive relationship with the student will enhance his or her potential for influencing their behavior in class. Yeah, modeling is well-known system utilized in various social learning. Modeling. Um, and models is effective in modifying behavior to the degree that they capture the attention, hold, and imitate. Yun. The best models are those that individual can identify with on the basis of one or more of the following traits: the sex, the age, and ethnicity, and physical attractives, personal attractives, and competence, power, and ability to reward imitators. Next. The building good disciplines through modeling includes the following. Demonstrate the demonstration. Students know exactly what to expect. They see and hear it. So means sa demonstration, you need to demonstrate the to student to easily understand what they want to tell her or his. Then the attention, student focus their attention on what is being depicted or explained. So means you need to get the attention of your student to learn what they say or what they you do, what say and then what they you do. Practice. Students are given opportunity to practice the appropriate behavior. Yon. Dito sa practice, you need to practice your student kung ano yung appropriate and positive behavior na gusto mong iparating sa kanila. Then corrective feedback. Student receive frequently specific and immediate feedback. Then sa correct feedback, dapat yung feedback mo is hindi nakaka-offense or hindi nakakasama ng loob sa student mo. Or yung feedback mo is hindi gaano makakasakit o makaka-apekto sa nararamdaman ng student mo. Then application, students are able to apply their learning in classroom activities and other real-life situation. Students are able to apply their learning in classroom. Yon, yung mga natutunan niya sa classroom, dapat ma-apply niya rin yun sa panghabang buhay niya or sa pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay niya. So na yun. Group managerial approach is to discipline is based of Jacob Collins. He described a ripple effect. Work involvement is the amount of time students spend engaging in assigned academic work time on tasks or academic engaged time. Then deviancy range from no misbehavior to misbehavior to serious misbehavior. Saan ba yun? Deviancy range from misbehavior to serious misbehaviors. So, means of misbehaviors, the student is not purposefully but nevertheless upsetting other student or teacher or slightly off task. Thus, mild behavior includes such action like whispering, teasing, passing notes, making faces, and others. And includes and with others or violates school or social codes. Sa serious misbehavior is aggressive or harmful behavior that interfere with others or violates school or social. The point is not Design techniques are teachers' action taken to stop misbehavior. Then witness is the ability to react on target and timely fashion. And overlapping behaviors refers to the teacher's ability to handle more than one student at the same time. The teacher's role in modeling. Saan na yan? Select behavior to be learned. Select most appropriate model and since the behavior is modified clearly, accurately, and successfully. Assist in helping observers focus attention on what is being modeled. So, sa select behavior to be learned, dapat meron ka dong specific objectives para mas matutunan ng estudyante. Tapos sa select most appropriate model, kung sa tingin mo yun na yung pinakamagandang model para mas maintindihan ng estudyante, then Yun ang dapat mong pagtuunan. Then next na. Ulo ko. Assist observers in remembering what they saw. Provides for sustainable practice reenacting that observed behavior. Provides corrective feedback. Provides reinforcement following desired behavior. This This teach this the teacher's role in modeling. The teachers need these 8 categories to be para maobserbahan yung mga estudyante kung ano yung dapat nilang gawin. Then this is the Connie's behavior and categories for observing classroom management. The categories of pupil behavior is work investment. Sa work investment, you need to definitely in, probably in, definitely out, and sa deviancy is to no behavior, mild behavior, and serious behavior. And this is the disguise while ago. Next. Categories of teacher management behavior. One is the disease techniques. With it needs is the target and the timing. And the overlapping is none and some. Next. Movement management. The smoothness, jerkiness is the stimulus bounded, thrust, dangle, truncation, flip, and flap. Then the momentum is the overdwelling and fragmentation. Next. Group focus is alerting. Create suspense, pick reciter randomly, mass unison response, and alert non-performance possibility of being called on. Present you or novel materials, ignore group of favor reciter, pre-pick reciter before asking question, predetermined sequence of reciters. Next. Sa accountability is asked to student to hold up props, actively attend mass unison response, call others to help the student, ask for raise and hands require. Performance, circulate and check products of non-reciters, require student to demonstrate and check performance.
Let's move on to movement management. Movement management is the organization of behavior in transition from task to task within and between lessons. So, dito sa movement management, mapapag-usapan natin yung sets ng behavior ng mga estudyante sa loob at pwedeng in between ng lesson. Movement may be characterized as smooth or jerky. Pag sinabing smoothness, it is an even and calm flow of activities. It involves uninterrupted work periods and short, fluid transitions that are made automatically and without disruption. So dito sa smoothness, hindi sobrang bilis, hindi rin sobrang bagal nung flow ng activities. Nasa katamtaman. At sabi nga dito, it makes automatically and without disruption. So ibig sabihin, walang mga interruption na nangyayari. Next. Ito yung mga nasa loob ng smoothness sa movement management. Avoids unnecessary announcement and interruptions when students are busy doing work. So, ikaw bilang teacher, kapag ang estudyante mo ay nasa activity or meron kang pinagawa, you need to make sure na hindi ka gagawa ng mga biglaang announcement kasi may interrupt sila, bigla silang may interrupt dun sa ginagawa nila, ma-out of focus sila. Second, finishes one activity before starting on the next. And mahalagang matapos mo muna yung isang activity bago ka mag-start ng bago para yung estudyante mo, meron silang readiness meron silang readiness mismo sa oras na magpapalit ka na nung activity or nung topic. Third, doesn't abruptly end or start that activity. So, ito, hindi mo pwedeng gawin yung biglang tigil, tas kahit hindi pa tapos yung isang topic, pumunta ka na sa isang susunod na topic, or hindi pa tapos yung activity, dinagdagan mo na naman ng isang activity. So, next. The second is the jerkiness characterized ng movement management. It is a disorderly flow of activities. It may result if the teacher tries to do many things at once or does not make clear to students procedure for ending one task and changing to a new one. Yan. So dito naman sa jerkiness, malinaw namang sinabing disorderly flow of activities. Yung sobrang daming gustong gawin ng teacher sa limitadong oras. Halimbawa, 1.5 lang yung oras mo ng pagtuturo. Tapos sobrang dami mong gustong gawin ng estudyante mo, di ba? Siyempre, meron kang oras sa discussion, di ba? Kaya sinasabi na itong jerkiness ay disorderly flow of activities. So, in order to prevent jerkiness, 5 subcategories of behavior should be avoided. Next. So, ito yung mga behavior na dapat i-avoid para ma-prevent natin yung jerkiness or yung disorderly ng activities. First is stimulus bounded. The teacher is so immersed in a small group of students or activity that he or she ignores other students or misses an event that is potentially disruptive. So, halimbawa, nasa gitna na magsisimula na yung activity tapos biglang may nangyari, di ba? May isang event na biglang na-focus yung teacher or na-focus ka, ikaw na teacher, na-focus ka bigla sa event na yon. So, ang mangyayari, yung mga estudyante mo na sana magtatanong, di ba, na sana lilinawin yung instruction mo, ang mangyayari, hindi na nila magagawa. At ang mangyayari sa activity mo, magiging disruptive na siya, di ba? Parang, ay, wala nang maayos na flow yung activity mo kasi na-focus ka sa isang bagay. So dapat hindi natin gawin at iwasan yung mga ganitong pangyayari. Next is trust. The teacher bursts into activities without assessing student readiness and gives orders, statements, or questions that only confuse the students. Ito, yung syempre tayong mga teacher, dapat yung as a teacher or sa mga teacher, dapat matutunan natin na linawin yung instruction kasi nga may mga activities na hindi nila agad naunawaan, ano ba yung gagawin, paano ba yung pagkakasunod-sunod, ano ba yung exactly na gagawin lang ng estudyante mo. Kaya itong trust, dahil hindi naman maling magtiwala sa estudyante, pero yung sobrang tiwala, di ba, na dapat i-ready natin sila dun sa activities na mga gagawin nila. Next. Third is dangle, or ito yung hang-on, the teacher ends an activity or drops a topic before it is completed. So, ito yung biglaang hindi mo tinapos yung katulad ng kanina sa smoothness, yun yung dapat hindi gawin, ba? Dito sa dangle, yung biglang hindi mo tinapos yung topic mo, tapos nag-jump ka na sa ibang topic. Tapos, fourth is tercation. The teacher ends an activity abruptly. So, ito, biglaan, di ba? Bigla mong pinutol yung activity, di ba? In-end mo agad. So, magkakaproblema ikaw at syempre yung mga estudyante mo dahil mabibigla din sila, di ba? Hindi na nila alam yung gagawin kasi bigla mong pinutol. Biglang nag-end yung activity mo. Ang panglima ay flip-flop. The teacher terminates one activity, goes to another, and then returns to the previously terminated activity. The teachers lack clear direction and sequence of activity. Ayan, dito naman sa flip-flop, hindi totally or lubos na maunawaan ng estudyante mo. Ano ba yung una nilang dapat matutunan? Kasi terminate mo yung unang activity. Tapos pumunta ka sa sunod. And then susunod, babalik ka na naman dun sa terminate mo. So mahalaga na yung sequence ng activity tsaka yung clear direction ay maibigay mo sa yung mga estudyante to prevent jerkiness movement sa loob ng classroom. Next. Movement management also involves momentum, that is keeping activities at an appropriate pace. Momentum is slowed or impede if the teacher engage in overdwelling or fragmentation. Dito sa momentum, kaya siya kasama dun sa movement management para malaman at makita natin as a teacher na saan ba talaga dapat ilagay itong activities na to, ano ba dapat ang mauuna. Ayan, next. Sa overdwelling, it may take the form of giving explanation beyond what is necessary for most students' understanding, or lecturing, preaching, nagging, or overemphasizing or giving too many direction. Dito naman sa overdwelling, yung you give explanation sa kung ano yung kailangan ng estudyante mong matutunan. For example, sa preaching, yung mga pastor nagpipreach sila ayon sa pangangailangan ng tao, ayon sa mga taong umaattend ng church. So, as sa teacher, ganun din. Nagtuturo sila sa kung ano yung dapat kailangang matutunan ng mga estudyante. Next. Fragmentation takes the form of giving too much detail, breaking things down into many steps, or duplicating or repeating activities. So dito sa fragmentation, napakadami mong binibigay na detalye, tapos marami ding steps, pwedeng madoble or maulit. Kaya minsan, nagiging negative yung result kasi mahihilo at hindi maintindihan ng estudyante mo saan sila magpo-focus. Next is the group focus. Is keeping the students focused on the group activity or task. It can be achieved by what Conning calls alerting. Sa alerting activities include creating suspense, presenting new material, choosing reciters randomly, and selecting reciters. Ayan. Here, in alerting activities, creating suspense, ibig sabihin, sa discussion, halimbawa, di ba, parang paano mo ba gagawing masaya or energetic yung discussion? Di ba? Kaya nga nauuso yung sa reciter, yung sa index card, di ba? Doon magpipick kung sino yung makukuha. Siya yung magre-recite, siya yung sasagot sa tanong. Di ba? Mahalaga yon as creating suspense kasi syempre yung mga estudyante mo, magiging watchful sila, 'di ba? Mas magiging focus, mas attentive, at talagang yung attention nila nandun sa discussion. At sinabi pa ditong select presenting new material. Ayan, dito sa alerting activities, mahalaga yung new materials, hindi pwedeng halimbawa every day yung turo mo, tapos yung instructional materials na ginagawa mo ay same lang. So parang yung estudyante mo maboboard. So ang mangyayari as a teacher para mabuhayan sila at maging masigla sila sa time ng discussion, bakit hindi ka mag-present ng mga bagong materials, 'di ba? Kung sanay ka lang ng board at chalk, bakit hindi ka maglagay ng mga pictures, 'di ba? Para mas maging maganda yung flow ng discussion at mas maging maganda rin yung behavior ng mga estudyante mo, maiiwasan yung lumilipad yung isip, 'di ba? Yung mga ganong bagay. Groups focus can also be achieved by using accountability. This involves such methods as asking students to hold up props, circulating to check and products of non-reciters, and requiring students to perform and checking their performances. So ito yung kanina dun sa report ni Mr. Jessie, di ba? Yung about accountability. So kailangan din, mahayaan natin yung estudyante natin na mag-perform and ipakita yung willingness nila na i-accept yung mga responsibility. Halimbawa sa performance, paano ba sila pag nasa unahan, di ba? Yun yung sa accountability. Next. Conning believes that work involvement, smoothness, and momentum are enhanced by instructional techniques that facilitate learning. Students' satiation of boredom can be avoided in 3 ways: by providing a feeling of progress, providing challenges, and adding variety to the lesson. So, ito nga yung kaninang iniiwasan natin, yung maboard yung mga estudyante natin sa loob ng discussion. Then, sabi nga ni Conings, yung work involvement ng smoothness and momentum ma-enhance depende dun sa instructional techniques na gagawin mo sa teacher to facilitate yung learnings ng mga estudyante mo, di ba? Sabi dito, in 3 ways, we can avoid yung boredom ng estudyante. First, providing the feeling of progress. Siyempre, kapag pinaparamdam natin sa estudyante natin na, uy, nag-i-improve ka, ang ganda nung ginawa mo dito, di ba? Yung encouragement, way yun para mas magkaroon sila ng eagerness na mag-aral at matuto pa. Next is providing challenges. Dito naman sa challenges, yung out of their interest, siguro yung challenges, maganda if yung challenges na ibibigay natin is according din sa mga interest nila. Para naman, para talagang mapakita nila ano ba yung talent nila sa pagkakaroon ng gawa ng creativeness, yung mga ganong bagay, and adding variety to the lesson. Katulad nung kanina, kung sa tingin mo sawa na yung mga estudyante mo sa paulit-ulit na board and chalk lang, di ba? Gumamit ka ng ibang mga new materials para ma-enhance pa at para din maging maganda yung ambience ng classroom nyo o mismo ng discussion o yung pagtuturo mo. Canin believes that students' engagement in lesson and activities is the key to successful classroom management. Students are expected to work and behave. The successful teacher monitors students' work in a systematic fashion, clearly defines acceptable and unacceptable behavior, and exhibit wittiness and overlapping abilities. So dito, sabi dito ni Colleen, yung engagement dapat ng estudyante sa lesson and activities ay yung magiging key para dun sa successful classroom management. Siyempre, ikaw na teacher, kung ikaw magtuturo ka and then yung makikita mo yung estudyante mo, wala namang willingness na makinig or wala yung attention niya, di ba? So parang hindi magiging successful yung classroom management mo as ikaw yung manager dun sa loob ng classroom. And then, sabi pa dito, the successful teacher monitors student work in a systematic fashion. Ito, titingnan mo kung paano ba yung behavior nila, di ba? Siyempre, meron silang behavior na tanggap mo na okay sa'yo as a teacher. Pero may mga behavior naman silang hindi maganda para sa'yo, parang hindi okay. Pero dapat ma-address natin yun in a nice way, di ba? Sabi nga, hindi mo pwedeng basta saktan yung estudyante mo, di ba? Dapat, when their behavior is parang, hindi negative, kailangan i-address natin yun ng maayos. And exhibit wittiness and overlapping abilities. Dapat, aware ka kung ano yung nangyayari sa classroom. Hindi pwedeng ilan lang yung makikita mo. Dapat, makikita mo yung estudyante mo at yung buong classroom as a whole, hindi yung iilan lang. Kasi, baka may nangyayari na palang gulo, yung mga ganong struggle sa mga magkaka-classmate, tas hindi mo pa alam, ikaw na teacher, ikaw na manager ng classroom, di ba? So, maganda na nagiging aware ka doon sa mga pangyayari sa loob ng classroom. The successful teacher has a clear sense of direction and sequence for tasks. Smooth transitions are made from one to another so that students' attention is turned easily from one activity to another. Similarly, lessons are well-paced. So dito nga, mahalaga sa isang teacher na magkaroon siya ng clear sense of direction and sequence of tasks. Kasi nga, mahirap pag iba-iba yung flow ng activities mo, may hilo yung estudyante mo, di ba? Uunahin mo ba yung activities agad bago ang discussion, bago yung mga ganong bagay. Kaya mahalaga sa teacher and to be successful teacher, magkaroon tayo ng klaro, concrete direction, instruction, and sequence ng mga activities na kapagawa natin sa ating mga estudyante. Next. Enhancing smooth transition and maintaining momentum. A variety of related instructional techniques help students make smooth transition from one activity to another and facilitate momentum in the classroom. So ito yung mga dapat gawin to enhance smooth transition and maintaining momentum. Next. Next na po. First, use structured curricula rather than discovering learning. So dito, you allow your students to involve o magkaroon siya ng involvement dun sa top o sa discussion, di ba? Halimbawa, sa discussion, ikaw na teacher, nagdi-discuss ka, syempre, wag mong hayaang salita ka lang ng salita, tapos yung mga estudyante mo, sa tingin mo nakikinig ba? So ano yung dapat mong gawin? Syempre, i-involve mo rin sila, di ba? As a question, di ba? Magsalit ka ng mga reciters, di ba? Randomly, pwedeng kukuha ka nung, yun nga, sa index card, yun yung pwede mong gamitin para ma-enhance yung smooth transition dun sa classroom. Second is, emphasize small, briskly paced instructional components. So, dito naman, maging in an energetic way, or yung ambience ng classroom nyo ay yung nakaka-excite mag-aral. nakaka-excite makinig, yung gano'n, yung sa discussion pa lang, na-excite na marami ka nang na-absorb, marami ka nang natututunan. So ito yung dapat as a teacher, ma-impart mo sa mga estudyante mo yung pagkakaroon mo ng energetic way of teaching, lalo na paggagamit ka ng mga iba't ibang instructional materials, dapat ma-impart mo ng maayos sa kanila ano ba yung mong matutunan nila. Third, provide detailed and repetitious instruction and explanation. Dito naman, syempre, may mga estudyante hindi pwede ng isa lang ang explanation, hindi pwedeng para yung isa lang yung instruction mo. So, you as a teacher, para maging klaro sa kanila, dapat detalyado yung mga explanation, yung mga instruction, concrete siya para madaling maintindihan ng estudyante mo ano ba yung gagawin. Number 4 is provide numerous example. Dito naman, once na nasa discussion, halimbawa, di ba, you need to provide more, di ba, more example para alam ng estudyante mo at maintindihan niya o maunawaan niya ng maayos ano ba yung itinuturo mo. Number 5, include frequent questions and opportunities to practice activities. So ito, include frequent question and opportunities. Siyempre, para ma-practice mo yung mga estudyante mo, makita mo kung attentive ba yung estudyante mo, di ba? Paulit-ulit na sinasabi na tatawag ka, mag-provide ka ng question, hayaan mong ma-involve sila doon sa discussion mo. Hayaan mong ma-involve yung mga estudyante mo at sumagot sa question once na may tinatanong ka. Yung ganong bagay para ma-achieve natin yung goal ng movement management, yung involvement ng estudyante sa lesson and sa activities. Next. Number 6, include frequent and immediate feedback and correction, especially in the early phases of instruction. Yan. Dito naman, halimbawa, meron kang ipapagawa sa mga estudyante mo, and then, nasabi mo na yung instruction. And then, meron kang isang estudyante nagtanong kung may lininaw. May klaro, yon, klaro. May kinaklaro siya. So, as you as a teacher, kailangan immediately sasagutin mo kung ano yung kinaklaro niya. 'Di ba? Kung mali man yung tanong niya, kung sa tingin mo dapat i-correct, ikaw correct mo siya agad for you and for your student na maunawaan, 'di ba? Na maintindihan na yun pala talaga yung exactly na gagawin. 7 is design instruction for high rates of success. Dito naman, kung gusto mong ma-achieve, kung gusto mong maging successful yung talagang pagtuturo mo, yung discussion mo, syempre, yung instruction mo pa lang, di ba? Talagang concrete, di ba? Halimbawa, gusto mong magawa talaga ng estudyante mong makapag-experiment, di ba? Halimbawa, gusto mo talagang magawa ng estudyante mong bikain yung tiyan nung palaka, di ba? So, magiging concrete yung instruction mo para maging successful yung experimental study nyo, di ba? Hindi mo lilinawin ano ba yung dadalhin, ano ba yung dapat suotin, di ba? Dapat maging malinaw siya. 8, limit the duration of seat work. So, ito, yung time sa seat work, di ba? Merong mga teacher na nagbibigay lang, halimbawa, 10 minutes lang, or mga 15 minutes, mga ganon. And number 9, arrange for overlearning to occur through frequent drill and practice. So, after halimbawa ng discussion, magkakaroon kayong drill or practice, syempre, i-arrange mo siya, baka mamaya, over na yung oras nyo dun sa drill, sa practice, baka the whole ng oras mo ng klase ay nakain na yung oras, di ba? So, dapat, you arrange as a teacher, yung time dun sa drill and practice. Syempre, i-arrange mo rin yung matututunan ng estudyante mo dun sa learning, dun sa drill and sa practice na gagawin nyo. Next. Group guidance approach. The group guidance approach is based on manipulating the surface behavior of the students on a group basis. Since teachers have few opportunities to work with students on an individual basis, they must learn to work with groups of students and to maintain group focus on the content and task of the group. Discipline and classroom control are produced through the group atmosphere and enhanced through group rapport. So dito na sa group guidance approach, hindi na tayo mag-uusap about individual. Ito papasok naman by group, 'di ba? Kung yung group ng estudyante kaya merong mga activities na by group ginagawa. So dito sa group guidance approach, pag-uusapan yung paano ba i-guide you as a teacher yung group students or yung group na o grupo ng mga estudyante, 'di ba? Next. The works of Fritz Redley and his colleagues with delinquent and disruptive youth is the basis for much of the group guidance approach. He holds that disciplinary problems have three causes. Next. First, individual case history. So dito dun sa study ni Fritz, sinabi niya na may mga estudyante na pwede kasing meron silang individual case history that the problem is related to the psychological disturbance of one child. Disruptive behavior in class is a part of the child's larger emotional problem. The surface problems are repetitive since they arise from the individual case history. So dito, pwedeng may isa sa loob ng grupo ng estudyante na halimbawa, may emotional problem, pwedeng mahiyain, halimbawa, takot makipag-socialize. Yung individual case na ikaw na yung estudyante yun makikita mo na parang pag nag-grouping, hindi para sa tingin mo baka mahirapang makipag-communicate sa kagrupo niya. So ito yung mga titingnan mo as a teacher para ma-assess mo yung group student o yung group activity na gusto mong gawin. Second, group condition. The problem reflects unfavorable condition in the group. It is easier to resolve than a problem produced by a case history. So ito naman, group condition, titingnan mo na sila as a group, hindi na by individual. Ano ba ang pagiging problema nila as a group? Yan, di ba? As a group. Sabi dito, mas madali siyang i-resolve rather than dun sa individual case history kasi yun naman ay iba-iba ng pag-uugali. So meron diyan na madaling makakausap, madaling mapapaliwanagan. Next. Mixture of individual and group causes. The problem centers around an individual but is triggered by something in the group. A remedy must consider both elements. So dito sa mixture of individual and group, pareho mo nang titingnan yung individual at yung group. Ano yung problema nung bawat isa sa grupo at ano rin yung problema nila as a group. Yun na yung titingnan mo dito sa pangatlo. Isa-centered mo siya dahil baka magkaroon kayo ng problema habang gumagawa kayo ng group activity. Diba? Baka hindi mo napapansin na yung kabila pa ng group ay may problema nang nangyayari, hindi mo pa napapansin. So magandang na-observe mo yung mga estudyante mo, lalo na kapag ginugrupo mo na sila. Next. In analyzing a disciplinary situation, Redley contends that teachers must ask themselves to what extent of problems reflects elements of the group, the teacher's own behavior, and the behavior of the students. To maintain good discipline, the teacher must understand the group it needs and interest and be able to manipulate the surface behavior of the group. So dito naman, para ma-analyze mo as a teacher yung disciplinary situation, hindi lang behavior ng estudyante mo yung titingnan mo. Siyempre, yung behavior mo din as a student, as a teacher. Kasi may mga student na halimbawa, nahiya sa yung magtanong kasi baka yung mga ganon, yung mga expectation, di ba? Yung parang nahihiyang magtanong, nahihiyang lumapit, or may kaklaruhin, nahihiya. Yung mga ganon. Kaya ikaw sa teacher, kung tingin mo, may nahihiya yung estudyante mo lang magtanong, ikaw na yung mag-approach, ikaw na yung lumapit, ano ba yung gustong itanong, yung mga ganong bagay. For you, and sabi, to maintain discipline, kailangan, maunawaan mo rin as a teacher yung kailangan ng grupo and saan sila, yung interest nila, di ba? So, para sa iyo madaling mo silang manipulate yung surface ng grupo, yung behavior. Madali mong ma-change, di ba? Kung may problema man. Group elements to be considered include the following. So ito yung mga group elements na kailangan ma-considered mo, 'di ba? Na ma-observe mo 'yan. Dissatisfaction with classroom work. The work is too easy or too difficult. The workload is too light or too heavy. Assignments are poorly planned or poorly explained. Assignments are considered unfair by students because they have not been prepared for them. Learning experiences emphasize verbalization, omitting motor skills, and manipulative activities. Work is badly scheduled, badly sequenced, or confusing. So, dito naman, may mga estudyante na syempre, halimbawa, madali lang yung paggagawa mo. So, para sa kanila, madadalian sila. Pero pag mahirap na, di ba, may mga, ano pa sila, may mga, minsan, may biglaang murmuring na, ang hirap naman nito. Ganyan, di ba? Halimbawa, sobra-sobra naman yung pinagawa mo, di ba? Sobrang dami, lumampas na, halimbawa, sa isang turuan mo lang, halimbawa nagpagawa ka agad ng limang activities. Syempre, yung mga estudyante mo, 'di ba? Medyo mahihirapan, 'di ba? Kaya mabuti kung ma-considered mo na may mga ma-observe mo kung saan ba sila mas okay, 'di ba? Sa tingin mo mas okay pero mas matututo sila, 'di ba? And halimbawa yung assignment, 'di ba? Hindi planado, 'yan. 'Di ba? Hindi mo agad nasabi, hindi mo na-explain. Pagdating ng kinabukasan na i-check mo na yung assignment nila, malay mo, mali yung naisagot nila kasi hindi mo na-explain ng maayos yung gagawin sa assignment. Kaya nga, concrete instruction yung kailangan, di ba? Tsaka yung sequence ng activities para yung mga estudyante mo, magkaroon talaga din sila nung kaliwanagan sa kung ano yung mga gagawin, di ba? Next. Poor interpersonal relation. Problems are caused by friendship or tension among individuals, cliques, or subgroups by badly filled group roles and by student-teacher friction. So ito naman, yung problema pwede nang sa magkakaibigan or yung tension among individual or subgroups. Kasi may mga pagkakataon na pag nasa grupo ko halimbawa, may mga iilan yung hindi maiiwasang mga pangyayari, may iilang, syempre, ikikritika ng isa, ganyan, di ba? Ikaw na teacher, dapat na-observe mo yun kasi nangyayari yun within the group at pwede siyang mag-cause na misbehavior ng mga estudyante mo. Third is disturbances in group climate. The climate is punitive, think we partially, or certain children can do no wrong, others are accused for almost not anything. Too competitive, leading to hostile or defeatist attitude. Too exclusive. The group rejects individuals who don't fit. So, ito yung mahirap sa grupo, 'di ba? Kasi nga meron diyang iisa na pwedeng siya lang yung sisisihin sa ganitong bagay. Kasi mali yung ginawa mo. May mga ganung grupo. And meron namang grupo na too competitive, 'di ba? Ang nangyayari na hindi na nagiging maganda or hindi na positive yung pagiging competitive kasi meron diyang talagang iba na yung nagiging way nila, 'di ba? Masyado na aggressive. Tapos na naman too exclusive yung mga groupmates, may ilan sa groupmates na ire-reject yung mga tingin nila ay hindi ka belong sa grupong to. Yung ganong bagay, and as a teacher, it's a challenge for you na ma-solve yung mga ganon at ma-manipulate mo yun kasi mahirap siya pagka hindi mo na-address, pag hindi mo naayos, 'di ba? Pag hindi mo nakikita, pag hindi mo na-observe, magsasuffer kasi yung estudyante mo din Tsaka syempre ikaw yung manager ng classroom, as ikaw yung advisor, ikaw yung teacher nila, mas mahihirapan ka. Kaya mahalagang na-observe or na-consider mo yung mga bagay na to. And para rin sa'yo, para maayos mo or ma-change mo yung mga misbehavior na pwedeng gawin ng mga estudyante. Next. Poor group organization. The group is characterized by too much autocratic pressure or too little supervision and security. Standard for group behavior are too high or too low. The group is too highly organized or too many rules or too unstructured. The group organization is out of focus with the age, developmental maturity, social background, needs or abilities of the group members. So ito naman sa for group organization, meron kasing grupo na halimbawa, ay grupo sila ng marurunong. Yeah, so tingin mo naman sa group, yung sa kabila naman, yung tingin nila sa grupo nila, yung mga ganon, yung mga light, yung mga ganon, di ba? So parang, as a teacher, dapat, kung ikaw yung magugrupo, kung ikaw yung gagawa ng grupo, maging fair ka dun sa member ng group. Hindi pwedeng pinagsama-sama mo yung fast learner, tas iniwan mo lang yung slow learner, di ba? So dapat nasa gitna ka, 'di ba? Nasa pareho, 'di ba? Maging pantay at maging maiwasan yung bias na pangyayari. And sabi, in creating or the on group organization, out of focus siya sa age, sa developmental maturity, social background, needs, or abilities of the group members. Hindi mo pwedeng i-consider na, ay, ang magagaling lang sa pagdodrawing ang pagsasama-samahin ko, di ba? Hindi dapat ganon, di ba? Ang puro 18 lang ang magkaka-group, hindi dapat ganon, di ba? Maging yung developmental maturity, kung matured na yung isa tas isa hindi, bawal ba silang magka-group? Hindi. You as a teacher, maging pantay yung tingin mo sa mga estudyante mo when it comes to group organization. Next. Number 5, sudden changes and group emotion. The group is experiencing a high level of anxiety. For example, just before exam period, contemporary events lead to unusual depression, fear, or excitement. Students are bored. There is a lack of interest or emotion. So dito naman, yan, group emotion lang. Pagka nape-pressure, di ba, pressure dahil malapit na yung exam, tapos marami pa silang dapat gawin, marami pa silang deadline na dapat ipapasa. So, you as a teacher, i-encourage mo sila na wag silang, yung parang wag silang sobrang ma-pressure kasi hindi naman ganun. May mga pagkakataon kasing dahil overpressured ka, overpressure na yung mga estudyante mo, ma-out of focus na sila. So, halimbawa, pag dadating na yung exam, tapos pressured pa sila, nakakaranas sila ng mga depression or anxiety, maaaring mag-fail sila dun sa exam. Kaya, dapat yon ma-observe mo as a teacher and matulungan mo din sila, ma-lift up mo sila dun sa mga sudden changes na nararanasan nila. Next. According to Redley and his colleagues, boredom is one of the major causes of disciplinary problems, and it leads to withdrawal, frustration, and irritability, or aggressive rejection of the entire group on the part of students. Another key factor is the organizational composition. For example, in relation to students' need, abilities, or age, discipline problems are inevitable. So dito, halimbawa sa kabuuan ng estudyante mo, meron kasi talaga siyang hindi maiiwasang out of place, laging siya lang mag-isa, yung ganon, yung naiiwanan ng entire group, di ba? Siya lang yung nag-iisang naiiwanan, yung walang masyadong kausap, yung mga ganong pangyayari and mga ganong behavior. At sabi din dito yung boredom, yung pagiging bored, or may mga nakukuha yung atensyon ng estudyante mo, yun din yung isa sa major causes ng disciplinary problems. Kasi pwedeng i-withdraw nila ano ba yung gusto mong matutunan, ano ba yung sinasabi mo, di ba? Pwede rin dahil sa frustration or sa mga bagay-bagay na nagdudulot ng mga ikinaiinis nila. Yung mga ganong pangyayari o ganong mga sitwasyon or feelings ng estudyante mo na minsan mahirap siyang bigyan ng solusyon. But you as a teacher, it's a challenge. But dapat maging handa and ma-address mo yung mga ganong bagay. Diba? Next. Perhaps one of the most difficult managerial tasks for the teacher is dealing with a hostile or aggressive group. Such a classroom group subtly and overtly defies the teacher and disrupt interactional activities. Among the symptoms that reveal this condition are next. Continual talking, lack of comprehension when instructional tasks are presented, constant disruption and interfere with teaching, overall nonconformity to classroom rules or school practices, overall challenges and refusal to obey, group solidarity in resisting the teacher effort. So, dito naman, mahirap for you as a teacher to manage sa classroom or na yung mga estudyante is hostile or aggressive, di ba? Hindi ka nila susundin. Sabi dito, overall challenges are refusal to obey. Di ba? Yung hindi nila susundin yung rules mo, di ba? Yung attention nila nawawala, di ba? Hindi sila out of focus lagi sila and kahit tingin mo, kahit ikaw na teacher nag-e-effort, parang wala lang yun sa kanila, di ba? So yun yung mga challenging na o yung pinaka-difficult para sa mga teacher, yung magkaroon sila ng mga estudyante na yung talagang nasa aggressiveness yung behavior. Next. In other cases, the problem can be traced to the student's attitudes toward authority and has little to do with the teacher. Here, the teacher must be able to change the student's feelings of hostility to trust and confidence. According to educators, the difficult task of developing a positive working relationship with the students on an individual and group basis involves reacting with sensitivity to the needs and feelings of the students. So, sa iba namang kaso, di ba, yung mga problem, pwede siyang matrace dun sa student attitudes, di ba, toward authority and has a little to do with the teacher. So, pagka, halimbawa, parang feel ng estudyante niya na parang siya may authority na mag-refuse, pwedeng hindi sumunod. So, pwede ring maging other cases yun ng behavior ng estudyante, yung sa attitude na yung feeling niya nasa kanya yung authority na huwag susunod sa sasabihin ng teacher. Pwedeng hindi niya gawin kung ano yung pinapagawa ng teacher, di ba? But sabi dito, here the teacher must be able to change the student's feelings of hostility to trust and confidence, di ba? So, as a teacher, may challenge na ma-change mo yung behavior ng estudyante sa pagiging agresibo, 'di ba? O yung sa pagiging feeling niya siya yung nasusunod dapat, 'di ba? Into magkaroon siya ng dapat ma-change mo 'yon, dapat ma-manipulate mo yun as a teacher na darating yung panahon na magkakaroon siya ng trust, 'di ba? Ng confidence na sa susunod matuto na siyang sumunod, yung mga ganon, na matuto na siyang wag sumaway sa teacher. Yun yung dapat na ma-change mo sa estudyante mo as a teacher. Sabi nga dito, according to educators, yung difficult task is yung developing of a positive working relationship doon sa estudyante, individual and sa group basis. Yun yung isa pa sa difficult task ng teacher, yung ma-develop mo yung positive working relationship ng buong klase. Kasi nga, di ba, katulad na sinabi ko kanina, may pwedeng sa loob na classroom may isang out of place lagi, di ba? So, for you as a teacher, kahit mahirap, dapat relationship ng buo mong klase, ng buo mong estudyante. Making an effort to understand students' individual problems, showing trust and respect for them, listening to and observing them, diagnosing what has to be done to manipulate their surface behavior in a group, providing meaningful work, and encouraging on-task behavior. Of course, if teachers do not diagnose management problems correctly, especially group managerial problems, the problems will persist and increase. So, ito nga yung dapat mong gawin as a teacher para ma-manipulate mo or ma-observe mo or ma-diagnose mo yung mga problem, yung mga misbehavior ng mga estudyante mo, di ba? Or ma-encourage mo sila paano mo ba i-change yung understand students individual problem, di ba? Kung meron silang mga problema individually, tapos gusto ka nilang, halimbawa, gusto ka nilang kausapin, di ba? Gusto nilang mag-open up sa'yo, you as a teacher, syempre, i-allow mo yung mga ganong mga yung mga ganong bagay and syempre ikaw kasi as a teacher ikaw yung parang pinagkakatiwalaan ng estudyante mo, 'di ba? So mahalaga na yung ikaw na teacher meron kang time para makinig sa mga gusto nilang ikwento, halimbawa lalo na mga individual problem, and sabi dito listening and observing them, 'di ba? Lagi pakinggan mo sila, i-observe mo sila the way kung paano sila sa room, paano yung mga behavior nila, paano sila yung way ng pananalita, paano sila sumagot, paano sila mag-approach, yung mga ganong bagay. And i-diagnose mo rin yung mga ano ba yung dapat mong gawin, yung ano ba yung dapat mong ibigay or yun nga gawin para manipulate mo yung surface behavior ng grupo kasi mahalaga yun kapag mahalaga yun sa iyo as a teacher and sa estudyante mo na may mga behavior silang na-change, di ba? Yung positive behavior yung nagiging outcome mo.
So, good morning po. So, yung topic ko ay humanistic approaches. The humane school recognized that all children need to valued and respected as people. So, we all understand that as a teacher, it is important or we must respect all the students, especially in their perception. And we must also treat them equal. Tapos, the humane school places great faith in the importance of classroom teacher as the key to its success or failure. So, alam natin lahat na teacher yung dahilan or nakadepend sa teacher kung magiging successful ba yung estudyante or magiging fail siya sa future. Next. This is, of course, asking a great deal of teachers, yet I see no other way if schools are to become the sort of place where children learn or not only to read and write, but also to understand and to care. So, tayo ding mga teacher yung magtuturo sa mga estudyante kung paano paano makaintindi at kung paano ano parang magpahalaga sa iba or yun, to understand and care. Tapos, it matters then how the time is spent for the quality of children's lives in school probably has the most direct relationship to the quality of lives they will live later as adults. So, what students are going to do in the future, it is because of what they learn in school. Next, acceptance approach. The acceptance approach to discipline is rooted in humanistic psychology and maintains that every person has a prime need for acceptance. So, dun sa acceptance approach, as teacher, we need to accept our students of who they are. And we need to accept their perception even if it's right or wrong. And we must allow students to participate in decision and make choices. So according to me, students should try all kinds of behavior to get status and recognition. If they are not successful in receiving recognition, they will turn to a mistaken goals that result in antisocial behavior. And this is the four mistaken goals. The first one is attention getting. When the students are not getting the recognition they desire, They often resort to attention-getting misbehavior. Yan. They want other students or the teacher to pay attention to them. They may act the class clown as a special favor, continually seek help with assignment, or refuse to work unless the teacher hovers over them. They function as long as they obtain their peers or teacher's attention. Dun sa attention getting, yun yung mga estudyante na laging nagjo-joke sa kapag ka nagle-lesson ka or nagdi-discuss ka, kahit hindi naman dapat na may sabihin pa yung estudyante na joke, pero ginagawa pa rin niyang joke. So, iyan yung mga ganon, gusto nila na makakuha ng attention sa teacher tsaka sa estudyante. Yung gusto nila na sila yung nasa kanila yung attention. Next, power seeking. Students express their desire for recognition by defying adults to achieve what they perceive as power. Their defiance is expressed in arguing, contradicting, teasing, temper tantrums, and low-level hostile behavior. If the students get the teacher to argue or fight with them, they win because they succeed in getting the teacher involved in a power struggle. So, dun sa power seeking naman, gu- mas kapag ka napapansin sila ng teacher, mas masaya pa sila or kahit may gawin silang mali, tapos mapapagalitan sila ng teacher, mas masaya pa sila doon. Tapos akala nila, sila yung mas may power kaysa sa teacher. Kaya, sila yung yung feeling nila sila yung may karapatan sa classroom kaysa sa teacher. Test number 3, next. Revenge seeking. Students who fail to gain a recognition their mistaken goal is to hurt others to make up for being hurt or feeling rejected and unloved. Students who seek revenge don't care about being punished. They only care about being simple logic doesn't always work with them. Being punished gives them renewed cause for action. The more trouble they cause for themselves, the more justified they feel. So, dun sa revenge seeking, pag nabibigyan ng parusa, masaya pa sila. Tapos hindi kasi sila natatakot sa mga parusa kahit pa anong parusa yung sabihin ng teacher sa kanila, hindi talaga sila natatakot. Tapos akala nila kapag nakakagawa sila ng masama or mali, tapos mapaparasan sila ng teacher, akala nila or akala nila nagantihan na nila yung teacher nila doon. Tapos number 4, next. Withdrawal. If students feel helpless and rejected, the goal of their behavior may become withdrawal from the social situation rather than confrontation. They guard whatever little self-esteem they have by removing themselves from situations that test their abilities. Such withdrawal displays their feelings of inadequacy. If not helped, they eventually become isolated. So, yung sa withdrawal naman, sila yung mga estudyante na parang laging mahiyain, tapos lagi silang humihiwalay din sa mga classmate nila. Sila din yung laging mag-isa. Kasi nagiging ganun sila, tapos yung parang parang lagi nga silang mag-isa. Kasi hindi sila nagpa-participate tsaka nakiki-cooperate dun sa mga classmates nila. Tapos next, The first thing teachers need to do is to identify students' mistake goals. The type of misbehavior indicates the type of expectation students have or their mistaken goal. Next. Para malaman natin yung mga mistaken goals nila, ito yung 1 to 4 na kailangan muna malaman ng teacher kung ano yung klase na mistaken goals yung meron yung estudyante niya. So, number 1, if students stop the behavior and repeat it, their goal is getting attention. So, di ba may mga estudyante na na mga nagjo-joke nga or kapagka nagdi-discuss yung teacher kung ano-ano yung mga sinasabi nila para maging makuha yung attention ng mga estudyante, yung mga kaklase niya tsaka ng teacher niya. Minsan biglang natigil yon tapos biglang magjo-joke ulit or may sasabihin ulit kasi nga gusto niya na makaget ng attention. So kapag ganun yung estudyante mo, yung mistaken goal niya is getting attention. Tapos number 2, if students refuse to stop or increase their misbehavior, their goal is power seeking. Ito naman yung mga estudyante na kahit patigilin mo na dun sa ginagawa nila kasi mali nga, hindi pa rin nila tinitigilan. Yun naman yung, kasi akala nga nila mas may karapatan sila kaysa sa teacher. So, yun naman yung power seeking. Tapos number 3, if students become hostile or violent, their goal is getting revenge. Sila naman yung nakakasakit na ng mga kapwa nila estudyante or nakakasakit na sila ng teacher nila. Kapag ganon, getting revenge naman yon. Tapos, number 4, if students refuse to cooperate or participate, their goal is withdrawal. Yun naman, kapag withdrawal naman, hindi nga sila nakikipag-cooperate sa kaklase nila, pati na hindi sila nakikipag-participate. And next. After teachers identify the mistaken goals, they need to confront the students with an explanation of what they are doing. So, kapag nalaman na ng teacher yung mga mistaken goals ng estudyante niya, kailangan na kausapin niya yon at ipaliwanag niya ng clear sa estudyante na naiintindihan ng estudyante yung ginagawa niya at kung bakit siya kinausap. Because according to the Ray course, teachers can get students to examine, even change their behavior. So, responsible ng teacher na e-examine sila at mapagbago ang behavior nila. Thus, the teacher should then encourage students in their efforts to recognize their mistaken goals and to change their behavior. So, kailangan talaga ng teacher na magbigay ng effort, time, para mapagbago yung estudyante niya. Kasi hindi madali sa estudyante yung ginagawa niya. Next. Encouragement consists of words and action that convey respect and belief in a student's abilities. It tells students they are accepted. It recognizes efforts, not achievements. Dito sa encouragement, so kailangan natin na ma-encouragement yung mga student natin sa mga sinasabi natin at sa mga ginagawa natin na pero dapat may respeto at naniniwala tayo sa mga abilities ng students natin. Saka kailangan kapag may nakita tayo na gumawa talaga sila ng effort para magawa yung activity, dapat masabi naman natin na so yung praise on the other hand is given when a task is achieved. It promotes the idea that an action is worthless unless it receives praise. So, dun nga, dito sa praise, kailangan nga daw, masasabi lang daw na yung isang bagay ay worth kapag nagbigay ka ng praise sa kanya. So, malalaman lang ng estudyante na maganda yung ginawa niya or worth it talaga yung ginawa niya kapag ka sinabihan natin sila ng, wow, ang ganda naman yan, wow, ang galing naman yan. Ganon. Tapos, next, finally, the teacher needs to be sure the students are aware of and understand the consequences of inappropriate behavior. The consequences must be closely related to the misbehavior as possible, and the teacher must apply them consistently, immediately, and in a calm manner, displaying no anger or triumph. So, kapag ka binigyan natin ng parusa yung estudyante na nagkamali or na may ginawang mali, dapat alam ng estudyante or ina-aware natin or ini-inform natin yung estudyante natin kung ano yung nagawa niyang mali, kung bakit siya paparusahan, gano'n. Kasi siyempre, mahirap yung paparusahan mo siya, oo, pinarusahan mo siya, pero hindi niya naman maintindihan kung bakit. Tsaka dapat kapag nagbigay tayo ng parusa sa kanila, dapat hindi tayo galit. Kasi syempre pag galit tayo, baka mali na yung parusa na maibigay natin. Baka sobrang parusa na yon. To encourage students, be positive and avoid negative statements. So, dun nga, dapat laging, kapag teacher ka, dapat laging positive yung sinasabi mo. Kahit dun sa pagsasabi pa lamang ng mga, kunyari, yung mga nagpa-recite ka, tapos mali yung sagot ng estudyante, dapat hindi mo sinasabi na mali yun. Dapat sabihin na lang natin, another answer please, ganon, or basta wag makakasakit dun sa estudyante, tapos wag natin sasabihin na mali sila. Kasi dapat nga, ina-accept natin lahat ng perception nila. Tapos, encourage students improve, dapat i-encourage natin yung estudyante natin na mag-improve pa. Hindi yung feeling na parang perfect na sila or masigitan na nila yung mga teacher. Kasi may mga ganun eh. Yung akala nila mas magaling na sila sa mga teacher. Tapos, encourage effort. Results are secondary if students try. So, dapat sinasabihan natin sila na mag-effort din sila sa mga ginagawa nila. Kung gusto talaga nila na madaming praise na matanggap, talagang mag-e-effort dapat sila. Tsaka magta-try. Tapos emphasize strength, minimize weaknesses. So dito, kaya kapag nagpapakilala tayo sa mga teacher natin, kapag first meeting, kasi, tinatanong nila kung ano yung mga strength at weaknesses natin. Kasi gusto nila na malaman nila yung mga strength at weaknesses natin kasi para maiwasan nila yung mga weaknesses natin, tsaka para matulungan nila tayo na ma-overcome natin yon. Tapos number 5, teach students to learn from mistakes. So, ayun, kailangan, matuto din sila sa mga mali nila. For example, dun sa mga exam, tapos may direction sa true and false. Sasabihin mo, pag true, check, tapos pag false, lalagyan ng X. Pero ang ginawa pa rin nila, true tsaka false. Eh di matututo na sila. Next time, magbabasa nila na sila ng direction para hindi sila mamalian. Tapos next, stimulate motivation, do not exert undue pleasure. So, kailangan nga ma-motivate natin sila sa lahat ng mga ginagawa nila. Tapos, dapat hindi natin sila pine-pressure dun sa mga activities. Tapos, encourage students independence. Dapat, si- or kaya din nila na magsagot mag-isa. Ganon. Kasi yung ibang students, akala nila hindi nila kaya. So, kailangan, ma-encourage natin yung students na, maging independent. Tapos exhibit faith in students' abilities. Dapat naniniwala tayo sa abilities ng student natin. Dapat naniniwala tayo na kaya nila yon. Tapos offer to help overcome students' obstacles. So kapag nahihirapan na yung mga students or may problema sila or meron silang hindi maintindihan, dapat willing tayo na tulungan sila. Dapat hindi lang sa lesson or hindi lang sa mga activities na meron sila, kundi pati sa mga personal nilang buhay. Dapat willing tayo na magbigay sa kanila ng advice kapag hindi na nila alam yung gagawin nila or mga decision nila sa buhay. Tapos encourage cooperative or team effort among students. Tapos, kailangan sa isang team or sa isang group, pag magpapagroup ka, kailangan may cooperation. Lahat gagalaw, lahat may send positive notes home, note improvement. So, kailangan nga na positive lang lahat ng sinasabi natin sa kanila, lahat ng praise, lahat dapat positive lang. Tapos, show pride in students' work, display it. Kahit maganda or hindi masyado maganda yung activity ng estudyante, dapat ipagyabang natin yun. Kasi para magkaroon din sila ng mas ma-improve yung self-confidence nila. Tapos, be optimistic, enthusiastic, and supporting. Yun kailangan na lagi-lagi tayong may energy kapag humaharap sa kanila. Tsaka dapat, kailangan lagi lang tayong nasa likuran nila sa sumusuporta sa kanila. Set up situation that lead to success for all. So, dito naman, kailangan daw lahat ng ginagawa natin makikinabang din lahat ng students natin. Hindi lang yung ibang students, kundi lahat dapat. Tapos, 15, use encouraging remarks. I know you can. Keep trying. That's a boy. So, dito naman, yan nga, kailangan natin na bigyan nga sila ng encouraging remarks. Yung kaya mo yan, mag-try ka lang parate, mga ganon. Kasi kailangan din nila yon para mas ma-improve pa nila yung mga kaya nilang gawin. Next. To enforce consequences. Dito naman tayo sa pagpapatupad ng mga parusa. Number 1, give clear direction. So, kailangan dapat nga na naiintindihan ng estudyante yung mga rules and regulations mo. Lahat ng parusa, lahat ng mga dapat at hindi nila dapat gawin, dapat clear sa kanila yon. Number 2, establish a relationship with each student to toss on mutual trust and respect. So, dapat nagtitiwala tayo sa mga students natin at the same time, nagtitiwala din sila sa atin. Tapos, may respeto tayo sa kanila, tapos may respeto din sila sa atin. Tapos, number 3, consequences must be logical. A direct relationship between misbehavior and consequences must be understood by students. So, ayun nga, kailangan nga naiintindihan ng mga students yung mga dapat na mga mali nilang ginawa at yung mga parusa doon. Tapos, perceive behavior on its proper perspective. Avoid making issues out of trivial incidents. Yung mga ibang teacher kasi, mahilig sila magawa ng issue. So, for example, nakita niya lang na magkasabay yung isa niyang babae at isa niyang lalaki na student. Tapos, sasabihin niya na agad, anong nagmamagitan sa kanila, mga ganon. Siyempre, walang kakwenta-kwentang walang kakwenta-kwentang situation tapos gagawan mo ng ng issue, di ba? Tapos permit students to assume responsibility to their own. So, dapat ipaalam natin sa mga estudyante natin na kung ano yung mga responsibilidad nila. Number 6, treat students are as social equals. So, kailangan nga talaga na lahat ng students mo ay itrato mo ng pantay-pantay. Kahit mahirap or mayaman or anak ni Gob pa man yan. Dapat students yung dapat pantay-pantay lang para sa iyo yung mga estudyante mo. Number 7, combine friendliness with firmness. Student must see the teacher as a friend, but limitation must be established. Yan, kailangan, nakikita tayo ng mga estudyante na parang tropa lang nila tayo or kaibigan lang nila tayo para madali din natin makita yung mga behavior na nilalabas nila or para maging open sila sa atin. Kaso, dapat may respeto pa din syempre. Kahit ganun yung turing nila sa atin, that nire-respeto pa rin nila tayo. Number 8, distinguish between the deed and doer. React to the behavior, not the person. So, kapag yung estudyante natin ay may mali, kailangan hindi natin nakikita yung siya mismo, kundi yung mali niya lang. Kunyari, may pagkakamali siya, dun lang tayo magpo-focus, hindi dun sa mismong tao. Tapos, hindi porket gumawa siya ng mali ngayon, gagawa na ulit siya ng mali kinabukasan. Yun, kaya dapat yung isang pagkakamali lang yung tutuunan natin at dun lang, para makapagbigay din tayo ng tamang parusa, dapat dun lang, yun lang yung tinitingnan natin, hindi yung person mismo. Next. Set limits at the beginning, but work toward a sense of responsibility on the part of students. So, sa simula, dapat nga na mag-set tayo ng mga limits. Tapos, ipaintindi natin sa mga students kung ano yung mga responsibility nila. Tapos, keep demands or rules simple. Kailangan, simple lang yung mga rules natin kasi yung ibang teacher, ang hirap-hirap ng mga rules nila na parang imposible nang magawa. Tsaka, basta mga sobrang hirap na rules. Dapat mga simple lang, yung mga kayang-kaya lang gawin ng mga estudyante natin. Tapos 11, mean what you say, carry out your rules. So, kailangan, kapag nagsabi ka ng rules and regulation mo, totohanin mo talaga. Dapat, ibibigay mo talaga yung parusa na dapat meron doon. Tapos, close an incident quickly. Receive good spirits. Mistakes are corrected, then forgotten. So, kailangan, kapag nasa situation tayo na may nagkamali ng bata na parusahan na natin, dapat hindi na natin pinapaalala ng paulit-ulit. Kunyari, ngayon, nagkamali yung bata, naparusahan mo na, naintindihan na niya, na-correct na natin yung mali niyang ginawa. Tapos kinabukasan, ipapaalala mo na naman sa kanya na nagkamali siya. Hindi dapat ganon. Dapat pagkatapos ng isang mali, at naintindihan na ng mga bata yun, at naitama mo na naman yung mga pagkakamali niya, dapat kinakalimutan na yun.
Success approach. Like the acceptance approach, it is rooted in humanistic psychology and democratic model of teaching. However, instead of dealing with inappropriate behavior and consequences on such behavior, it deals with general psychological and social conditions. Students who have feelings of positive self-worth and experience success will make good choices most of the time. Glazer's view about discipline is simple but powerful. Behavior is a matter of choice. Good behavior results from good choices. Bad behavior results from bad choices. So a teacher job is to help the students to make good choices. William Glaser most noted for his approach, which he calls reality therapy, insists that although teachers should not excuse bad behavior on the part of the student, they need to change whatever negative classrooms conditions exist and improve conditions so they lead to student success. The road to positive self-worth and success begins with a good relationship with people who care. The teachers must show that they care and they are positive and be persistent about both. Next. Glaser makes the following suggestions. Number one, stress students' responsibility for their own behavior continually. Since good behavior comes from good choices, the responsibility of students for their choices and behavior must be explored and clarified every single day. Number two, establish rules. Rules should be established and agreed upon early in the term by the teacher and student. It should facilitate group achievement and group morale. Number three, accept no excuses. In this suggestion, the teacher should not accept excuses for inappropriate behavior as long as they are or the students are able to distinguish right from wrong. Number four, utilize value judgments. When the students exhibit such inappropriate behavior, the teacher should call on them to make value judgment about their behavior. In this suggestion, it enhances the students' responsibility to make better choices. Number five, suggest suitable alternatives. Alternatives to inappropriate behavior should be suggested for the students to let them know what they what they did was wrong. Number six, enforce reasonable consequences. Reasonable consequences must follow whatever behavior that the students choose. The consequence of good behavior should be satisfying to the students. The consequence of inappropriate behavior should not be erratic, emotional, sarcastic, or physically punishing. Number seven, be persistent. The teacher must always help the students to make sure that the students are committed to desirable behavior. Number eight, continually review. Topics and issues should be discussed and developed during classroom meeting, separate from academic activities. Classroom meeting is the only time for the students and teachers to seek plausible solutions to any problem in their classroom. In a recent summary of his views, Glaser makes the point that teacher must be supportive and met with students who are beginning to exhibit difficulties, and they must get students involved in making rules, commitments to the rules, and enforcing them. It said that the school must be a friendly and warm place, especially for the students who have previously experienced failure in the school. For them not to feel stupid and for them to make an effort to do their best or to work even better in the future activities. For Glaser, school reform is not linked to stimulating teachers and students to work harder. People, including students, will not be more productive unless it is being asked of them. It's psychologically satisfying. We have to change the school by making it more satisfying in students and more consistent in their interests so that they will gain sense of power, fulfillment, and importance in the classroom. Glaser's ideas involve time set aside for therapeutic sessions, encounter groups, or other forms of group discussion. For this reason, more elementary and junior high school teachers use this approach than high school teachers because because high school teachers are not expected to deal with social and or psychological problems of students on a regular basis, but they are more concerned with the subject matter.
Guidelines for implementing alternative approaches to classroom management. All seven approaches have elements of prevention and intervention, and regardless of how flexible they are, it has to deal with rules, limitations, and consequences of behavior. In all that approaches, students need to complete academic work and they also accountable for their behavior and work. Although all approaches promotes having clear communicated rules, the teachers must have authority with students. Here, in all seven approaches, it discusses about how to control the behavior of the students. The students also needs to face their consequences of their behavior that they have shown. Teachers must have the power to control the attitude of the students and they must know how to give punishments based on the misbehavior of the students. The more assertive approaches look on the teacher to take control of the classroom and quickly establish rules. Being assertive means being able to stand up for your own or other people's rights in a calm and positive way. In assertive approaches, the teacher must have to handle their students properly and he or she can make rules for the better handling of the students. The more humanistic approaches emphasizes positive expectation of students. In humanistic approach, the teacher must always see what improvements did their students do and not on the negative side. This is where the educational theory that believes in teaching the whole child. A humanistic approach will have a strong focus on students' emotional well-being. Flexible approaches permits gratitude, latitude, and greater latitude in enforcing rules. Here in flexible approach, the teacher needs to respond and adapt on the changing circumstances and expectations, which means that they can balance several responsibilities at once and still make students smile and feel appreciated. The flexible approach imposes sanctions but emphasizes making students aware that their behavior influences others, helping them to examine their behavior and helping them identify the consequences of their misbehavior. In the firmer approaches, the teacher asserts authority that takes charge and tends to intervene immediately in all cases of misbehavior. In the firmer approaches, it advocates stricter imposition of generally more severe sanctions as a consequence of disobedience. Firmer approaches limit students' socializing and group activities that determine their academic task and demand that they complete assignment. Students are told what is expected of them and little time is spent in any activity other than academic work. All approaches rely on consequences. So the seven approaches was depending on what consequences and how they punish students based on the behavior they've shown. Punishment for inappropriate behavior is permissible as long as it is logical and related to the severity of the disturbance. The teacher can have the authority to punish their students based on the level of misbehavior of the students. But also the teacher needs to ask for the higher authority if the student shown poor behavior. All the approaches hold students accountable for academic work. In choosing an approach, teachers must be objective about their personality, philosophy, and what they are trying to accomplish. The teacher must always discuss what specific goal does he or she is trying to achieve inside the classroom. And at the end of the lesson, he or she must see the product of his or her teaching. Another point to consider is that some educators are quick to package programs that are discussed in the professional literature or advertised as reform or quick fix. The teacher must find easy remedy or solutions, especially in a temporary one which fails to address underlying problems. The teacher must be the one who makes changes inside the classroom in order to improve the students. Certain rules are central to all the models, but they are conceptual and must be modified according to the classroom situation and personalities involved. The model should not be interpreted as set in stone. For example, is when the teacher said, "Always raise your hand when you want to speak." These are example of the rules that the teacher can amplify to control the students from speaking in unison. The teacher needs to be flexible and examine their models of the relationship to their own classroom situation and personality. According to the experts, the models are supported by research and they provide an effective strategy for teachers to use. So it means that these 7 approaches was supported by some articles and books so they make sure that the 7 approach is an effective ways to manage students. In considering what is best for you must consider your teaching style, your students' needs and ability, and your school's policy. Also remember that more than one approach may work for you. The approach you finally arrive at should make sense to you on an intuitive basis. So as a teacher, you must know what ways you should use to teach properly. And also you must know what your ability is and the rules that is set by school. You can look and analyze the approaches and base there on your teaching style. So you can arrive at your own idea on what strategies to use for teaching. Don't let someone impose his or her teaching style or disciplinary approach on you. Don't let some people teach you on what style do you use to teach your students. You must have your own strategies and ways to improve and develop the skills of your students. Remember, what works for one person may not work on another person. For example, is when in the classroom you have one student that is yung parang mabilis siya, fast learner, and the other is slow learner. On that base, you can see that what you teach on the fast learner students may not work on the slow learner students. So you must focus on the slow learner students and use more strategies to help that students learn more.